uh, everybody has such a diverse and different background, and yours is very interesting because you've been around the cryogenic business for a long time, and you've had the opportunity to do a variety of different things, from company driver to driver trainer to owner operator. And so let's just start back at the beginning. How did you learn to drive a truck?
I started off a job in high school working part-time as a lumper, working for a moving company. And in the South Houston area, or South Texas, a lot of the crew was Mexican. And the boss we had at the time was like, you got to have at least one guy that speaks fluent English on every truck to talk to the customer.
Okay.
So after a few months, it was like, oh God, this guy's sick. I need somebody to drive the truck. I don't have a license, but I can drive it. It's just a 5-speed old international gasoline engine truck. It's like driving an oversized pickup. And so I started driving when I was 17.
Without a license?
Without a commercial license, or
Okay.
chauffeur's license is what we had at the time. Because I remember by the time I went to get my license the following summer, the officer, back in the days when you actually had to take a road test with a police officer, Texas doesn't do that anymore. They hire people to do it, and there's like one officer at the office that oversees everything. You don't even get the fear factor of riding with the trooper. But we got finished, and he's like, all right, you passed. Well, how long have you been driving this truck? Because you didn't just learn. So
what kind of a truck was it?
It was an old international. I don't even know what they called the model, but it was just a...
No kidding.
Oversized.
And you never got stopped?
No.
No?
Just driving around Houston most of the time with the straight truck was... just moving apartments.
Huh.
Sometimes she'd have 3 jobs to do in one day.
Yeah.
And,
so just out of curiosity, did you like being a lumper?
No. It didn't take me long to be. I want to be the driver.
Yeah, for sure, right?
Mostly because the driver gets paid more.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and then after that, I talked the boss into letting me take the tractor trailer around the business park and backing up at loading docks at empty warehouses to learn how to maneuver the tractor trailer. And then when the job came open and he needed somebody to drive a tractor trailer a couple of times, I got in it and went with it. Back then, it was always just an old, like a Ford 8000 with a different kind of transmission, different trucks. The worst one was probably a 5-speed transmission with a 2-speed rear end, and it was terrible to shift. If you missed a shift, you had to stop and start over.
Wow. That sounds like me and my Jeep the other day. So you did that, and you graduated from high school, and then you went to work for them full time, or?
Yes.
Okay.
And between the owner of the company and his wife getting divorced, she and her father bought out the company, and he and his brothers started another company, and I went to work for him over there, and was there about 5 years.
All local stuff, though.
All 99%. Every once in a while, we'd go out of town, but rare. But that's how I met my wife.
Really?
I moved her office from one building in Houston to another building. And I was in charge of the moving crew, and she was in charge of the organization. It was like the leasing company for a building. Mm-hmm. And they were moving their regional headquarters from one of their buildings to another one. And we went in there and got everything on the 3 trucks, and it was like 2 or 3 hours, and we're ready to go. And it's like, we're going to get lunch on the way to the new building. We'll meet you over there about 12:30. Well, turns out the carpet wasn't in yet. So myself and the other drivers sit in the lobby with the ladies that were at the office, mm-hmm. and we talked for about 4 hours, and my wife looked me up in the phone book and called me that night. And a year and a half later,
good for her.
A year and a half later, we were married.
Wow.
So
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. And she's from Houston too.
Yeah, from high school. She grew up
Yeah.
in Fort Smith, Arkansas, and her
Okay.
family moved to Stafford, Texas. And her father at the time was working for an outfit called National Cylinder Gas.
Okay.
And he ended up in Stafford, Texas to be the distribution manager at the new plant that they were building. And eventually it became part of Liquid Air Corporation.
Right.
And he hired me 2 weeks before Carolyn and I were getting married.
Well, that was kind of convenient, wasn't it?
Well, I did one of my last spur of the moment kind of things when I was single. I knew I was getting married in 2 weeks, but I quit my job.
So you weren't working when you got married.
Right. We got married on
you were
Saturday.
Unemployed.
I
You
was
were a catch, Ed.
I was yeah. We got married on Saturday, and I started the new job on Monday morning.
Wow.
So,
No kidding.
and I've been in the cryogenic business almost all that time since then. That was back in 1983.
But up to that point, you hadn't pulled any tankers.
None. And he actually had to fight the corporation about hiring a 23-year-old with no tanker experience, but he had 5 years experience as a driver and no tickets, nothing like that.
Mm-hmm.
Because they were trying to hire 5 drivers for hauling oxygen to a carbon black plant, and he couldn't even get 5 applicants. So they kind of used that as
not a whole lot's changed, has it? Yeah.
No, and this and that was how he got him to say, "Okay, we'll take a chance."
Yeah.
But the worst part back then was was like, okay, well, we're not going to tell anybody we're related unless they ask directly. And this was long before answering machines or pagers or anything else, and
sure,
you didn't have caller ID, and the phone rang. You didn't know if it was your friend calling you, your mother calling you, or your boss.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
It was interesting.
It was probably back in the day of the flip phone.
This was before there was even those brick phones that they carried to put in the cars. Yeah.
That was the military style thing. Those big handheld ones, I think.
Yeah.
More like walkie-talkies, right?
Exactly.
What was before the walkie-talkie? Or after the walkie-talkie was
the one that they had to install in the car. Yeah.
Yeah.
You couldn't take it out of the car because it was attached
Yeah, but there
to
were
the power.
two-way radios at one point in time, right? There were two-way.
Nextel.
Yes.
The walkie-talkie. Yeah. I like those.
Yeah. I didn't think those were bad.
They did pretty good. We actually had them in trucks, and it was. I go, okay, we need to talk to so and so. What truck is he in? And we'll call him on the radio. And
So it was Liquid Air back then.
Yes.
Right. And then what?
Was, working at that location at Stafford for about 4 years.
Okay.
And that got sold to a corporation that created Trigas. And eventually that became part of a Japanese outfit, Nippon Sanso, which also bought Matheson Gas. And now they do everything in the U.S. under the Matheson name.
Yeah.
Still running in that same plant there.
That's
a few miles from my house.
Yeah.
And
how long did you work there?
I worked at that location the first time for 4 years, and they closed the plant and bought another plant on the other side of town, which at one point had been part of BOC, British Oxygen Corporation. Yeah. And Trigas bought it and told us at one point, hey, you want your job, it's in the other side of town.
Okay.
And was forced to start driving across town, and then decided I need some better benefits for my family, and went to work down the road at Big 3 Industries, which was being operated separately from Liquid Air and then finally merged together.
Yeah.
And worked at that location for more than 23 years. and worked my way through being the guy working midnights and the weekends and all of that, and ended up being the lead driver trainer, working in the office half the time, until they decided they didn't need me there anymore.
Yeah, big companies have a way of doing that, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's been about 7 or 8 years since I left Air Liquide, and I probably only know 3 people left there.
Yeah, from the original group.
Even when I left, I mean.
So Big 3 went into Air Liquide.
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really hard to everybody that's been in the industry a long time. They talk about Airco, and it was interesting you said BOC because I didn't even know it was British Oxygen Company, right? I mean, we all know BOC, and BOC is no longer either, right?
Right.
So sometimes, and now Air Liquide bought Airgas, and Linde, right, bought Praxair, but now there's a new messer with all the Linde folks, and the cryogenic business is very fluid, but we all seem to stay in the same fold, right?
I've found over the years that a lot of drivers, once we get into this work, and yes, it's got a lot of little niches here and there, but for the most part, it's extremely consistent work, and for the most part, it's clean.
Yeah.
You get some places that you go off in the dirt, or in some of the businesses with CO2 is a little different. And that's the other thing that I've really enjoyed over the years, is that I started off doing just the liquid oxygen, nitrogen, argon, but over the years I have learned to do everything. And my most recent assignment here, I'm working with anhydrous ammonia. Right.
Yeah. It's something different all the time. But somebody once told me with cryogenics, once you get into it, you never get out of it. And so I left, right, the industry, and I think it was 2001. And I thought for sure I was done. And here I am back again, right, coming back into the industry. And it's, you make long-term relationships with people, and it's almost like a family, even though we all work for different companies. The people that used to work for Air Products now work for, Messer or Linde or whatever, and we all know each other. And even with the drivers, I mean, I've known some of these drivers for 30, 40 years. So it's just a family type of industry. It's very different.
Well, even though I've only been working for LGT for a little over 4 years, I mean, we crossed paths probably 20 years ago when you were at CTI. Yeah. And it's funny, and it's like, and I even remember saying at one point, probably more than once, I'll never be an owner operator. There's not enough there, I like the benefits, and Air Liquide changed my mind.
So do you mind if we talk about that?
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, so what happened with that? What was the whole experience that happened?
I did not leave on my own accord. Okay. I was accused of working with a driver on top of a carbon dioxide rail car and not wearing fall protection. And when I asked the manager that approached me about it 3 days later, well, show me the video. Well, he's like, what do you mean? I said, there's a video camera on top of the oxygen tank that points at that rail car and the railroad gate at the back of the plant 24/7. There must be a video of what you think I've done. And they never came up with anything and told me I was fired anyway. But, and it's, to me, it was a lot of my coworkers, and they've told me this since then, it's like, we can't believe this. Ed, that's Mr. Safety. That's all he ever preached while he was working as a trainer. It's like, doing the job safe is about protecting yourself. Not that I want you to follow the rule just because it's a rule. I want you to go home safe, which is the whole point of trying to do your job safely. And I'm trying to give you all the information you need to do that. And that's the way I believe I've done my job over the years. I can't even count the number of people that I've helped get into the cryogenic business and learn what they're doing.
Yeah.
And
so it's another one of those, what I call a life-changing event.
yes.
Right? And so here you are, and you're looking for a job, and what made you go to LGT?
Well, there were a couple of steps in between.
Okay.
It was very devastating to me. I mean, thinking at the point that I've got 23 years experience at this plant.
Yeah.
And I'm looking for maybe 7 more years to get my full pension. Still got the old style pension that they don't do anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm out of a job 3 weeks before Christmas. I called up a friend who had been doing the same work I did at Air Liquide at the time, and he was a depot manager for an outfit hauling hydrochloric acid.
Okay.
And I thought, okay, maybe this is my signal. I need to walk away from cryogenics. So I tried that for a year. And it was okay. And it was consistent work, but I just, the oil field started to go south and there wasn't enough work for all of us. And I thought, okay, it's time to try something else.
So were you still a company driver at that point?
Yes.
Okay.
I've been a company driver everywhere until I came to LGT.
Okay.
So I left there and I went back to work at the plant in Stafford, which is now run by Matheson. And at this point, my nephew is working there as a mechanic.
Okay.
The same old building that my father-in-law worked in as his office, and I worked there for a number of years, and then came back, and I worked there for about a year, and then of course it was a situation of I ended up getting let go because I made the decision to continue crossing a railroad track. I had stopped at a railroad track with a full load of oxygen.
Okay.
Waiting for the signal light to turn green. It turns green. I look both ways, still no signals going, no train. I start to cross the tracks. Well, the cameras in the trucks called drive cam have inside and outside cameras.
Right.
Well, the railroad track sets off, triggers an event. I cross. Well, I no sooner get my tractor to the white line and the light turns yellow. Well, my trailer is straight across the tracks. It's like, I can't stop.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I know it's wrong to run a red light, but it's wrong to stop with a full load of oxygen on a railroad track.
Right.
And I was fired because I broke one of their 5 golden rules. It's the only place I ever worked where they put up a poster next to the front door, and it's pretty much, these are the 5 ways we're going to fire you.
Okay.
If you violate one of these, you're gone.
It's your welcome sign.
Exactly. It's hidden in there a little bit, but after you're there for a little while, you realize that's what it is. These are the 5 ways. One of these 5 ways that you're going to get fired.
Okay.
And so I left and I tried over the road chemicals.
Okay. Working for
Grondike.
Okay.
Old fashioned trucking company. Got one of the. I was talking to a friend the other day, and I realized, Grondike only has a 4-digit DOT number on their trucks.
I believe it.
That is how old they are.
Yeah.
And great outfit. Just wasn't enough work, enough money for me.
Okay.
My wife has never had a full-time job since we had our first child. And that was a life decision we made, that she would be at home to raise our kids. Right. And that it was my job to provide. And so I just kept getting another job, and then I had been talking to a few drivers here at LGT that I had worked with in the past, and decided, okay, it's time. And we had a conversation, and a few weeks later, you're calling me back like, hey, you ready to come to work? Like, well, yeah, tornado hit my house the other day, but yeah, I'm ready. Let's go.
Did it really?
Yes.
Oh my God.
Hurricane Harvey. There was a
My
tornado.
timing's impeccable, isn't
It
it?
was. It was Hurricane Harvey in Houston.
Okay.
We didn't get hit with the hurricane so much, but there was a tornado that spun off, came down my street, ripped half the roof off my house, and I was home for about 5 days. And
So you actually had hurricane damage on your house when you went to the terminal to sign the lease, or how did that all come about?
Yes. The tornado had torn half the roof off of my house. We had already been through a number of days with cleanup crews in the house and hiring a contractor, and was at the point that Grondike is calling saying, are you ready to come back to work yet? Let us know. I mean, they were great. They were being helpful. They were giving support to all the employees in the area that had damage to their homes and things like that. And they weren't rushing me to try to come back to work, but it was like, yeah, it's time to change.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the times my wife probably was ready to wring my neck.
Really? Because you left her.
I left her with that mess
Yeah.
to deal with on her own.
Yeah.
For the most part, other than talking on the phone, because I spent a day or two in Baytown with the Russell and going through the actual training stuff, and then I got on a plane and flew up here to the other office.
Yeah.
And
the strip mall.
Signed my paperwork and got in my new truck.
Was it brand new?
Brand new.
Okay.
And
were you nervous?
Yeah.
Were you?
I was nervous, excited, all kinds of things. And it was a little rough at the beginning, more than I expected. And, I left Omaha, and I remember I went to Oklahoma to pick up an Air Liquide CO2 trailer, and then went to Mississippi running product for Star Mississippi plant into Atlanta area because of a plant outage. That was my first assignment for a few weeks.
Okay. What was rough about it?
Oh, I'd always been a local driver, regional.
Okay. Uh-huh.
Was only one time way back in about 84 that I ran team for about 4 or 5 months till some of the senior drivers realized we were making more money than they were. And they said, hey, you didn't ask if everybody wanted to do that teamwork. We want it. So, have at it. But the guy that I ran team with, Mark, he and I are still buddies today. It's we haven't worked together in 30 years, but we talk a couple of times a week.
Wow.
I'm his. My wife and I are both godparents for his son, and we've been friends ever since.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
you hear so many horror stories about, it was forced teaming, right? I mean, you didn't get to pick who you wanted to go with, right?
No, we were at the bottom of the seniority list, and it's either you run team or you're going to be laid off.
Yeah.
And I got a brand new baby on the way.
Yeah.
I'm not going to quit. So, yeah, but that turned into a career that's been pretty good to me.
Yeah.
Overall. I mean, yeah, there's some rough spots, but
yeah, there's always rough spots though, right? I mean, we all have that.
It was devastating to leave Air Liquide, but I wouldn't have ever I don't think I would have been in the position I am today.
Yeah.
And
so you like where you are today?
Yes.
Yeah, you like being an owner-operator more than a company driver?
Yeah, that's kind of 50-50.
Really?
Some days I think it would be easier if I was a company driver again, but I like the freedom of being the owner-operator. I'm making my decisions about when I'm working, when I'm not, what I'm going to do. and the newest challenge was to get on this ammonia.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, God, I have no idea what's going to happen. But I had already had a job where I was hauling some chemicals that I had to use the breathing apparatus or a respirator kind of thing. So it's just like, it can't be all that bad.
Yeah.
It's worth a try.
Did you like it? I mean, you're not doing it now. We talked about it a little bit.
Well,
it's different.
Yeah, it's a different line of work. No, it's not my favorite.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah.
And the previous assignment with this gas helium, I was having a great time with it, and other than the fact that I wasn't anywhere near home,
right?
And through some family issues, it's like, no, it's time to get back to the Houston area so that I can be home when I need to be home.
Right.
Even if it's just a day or a part of a day. And so that's been a blessing that I was able to say, look, I need to try something different for a little bit. And you were great for changing it up for me. And
yeah. So when COVID hit, right, it's it makes you rethink what you're doing as a business owner and the direction you're heading. And it became pretty apparent during COVID that we were completely dependent on one line of business, which is what kind of drove the decision to get into some different spaces like anhydrous and propane. So that's that's what's driving the decision. And I found that there's certain people that love that stuff, right? It's interesting. The first guy that we hired, he was a propane guy, LPG. That's what he liked.
Right.
And we tried to teach him anhydrous, and he didn't want that at all. I mean, he didn't like it. It's kind of like the same thing as the guys that run CO2 versus the guys and gals that'll do cryogenics. It's really hard to get one to do the other. Once they get set, they kind of like to stay in that space. So
I see, and I remember those days when I switched from at Air Liquide, where they had closed a CO2 plant and moved that business into the cryogenic depot. And we didn't know what to do with CO2. And we relied on some other drivers that were coming over from the other location.
Yeah.
One of them is a long-term driver, Sean Kleiner here.
Yeah.
And that's how I first met him, when he came over and was showing us what to do with CO2.
Right.
And that turned into all kinds of things, because we started off loading at plants, and then they started shipping it in by rail car, and we were trying to unload the rail cars into trailers and ship it. And it was just a crazy situation. And the actual deliveries on CO2 is so easy.
Yeah. When
you compare all the little tweaks of trying to keep a cryogenic trailer pumping depending on the pressure, CO2 is almost always the same, and you're using the pump to and the vapor hose to equalize, and you just put it in gear and wait.
Yeah.
It's like, and the other side of it, the compressed gases. So many drivers are like, no, I don't want to touch it, and but there's nothing to it.
Right.
To me, anyway,
But then you have people like you, right, that like variety. That's
Yeah.
what I think you like. Am I right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
And
do.
you'll do the anhydrous for a while, right?
Yeah.
But then you go do helium, and then maybe you might do hydrogen. Sometimes we pull HCl, sometimes carbon monoxide, and then you get back into Linlox and LAR, and maybe you get on a run for CO2.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a neat little business.
Yeah, and I love the fact that I was never afraid of the change.
Yeah.
I always took it as a new challenge. And, years ago, it was always about, well, if I learn something else, then when the work slows down, I'm more likely to keep working.
Right.
Than the guy that only wants to do CO2. Which, I mean, there's other guys working here at LGT. he started off as just CO2, and we were working on the same assignment, and he was like, oh man, I'm not doing anything else. And I finally convinced him to try nitrogen, and he's on an assignment where he's home for his 34-hour break every week because he's only 40 miles from the source, and he's loving it. He doesn't want to go back to CO2. And it's like, see, I mean, but if the pandemic kind of thing comes along and work slows down, you got more options.
Right. Something is always going to be moving. That's the beauty of trucking.
Yeah.
Something is always going to be moving, even if it just is a box fan.
Well,
and you have a lumper.
Yeah. Well, like back to the pandemic, I kept hearing through the grapevine, all these drivers were like, they go home for a few days off and they get knocked off their assignment because the carrier would say, we don't need you right now.
Right.
We're doing fine with you not being here. And there were a lot of drivers that weren't working for a long time.
Right.
I started hearing that, and I had a conversation with Carolyn, and I'm like, I don't know when I'm coming home.
Yeah.
And at that point, it was a couple of things, It's like my in-laws were both in bad health. My mother-in-law has trouble breathing. My father-in-law, Carolyn was taking care of him a lot. And I don't want to chance coming home and pass something to them if I've come across the virus on the road. So I'm going to stay out here.
Yeah.
And I worked more than 100 days in a row, and finally the air gas dispatch says, hey, are you going to take some time off? I said, as long as you let me come right back. And, so I finally went home for a week.
Okay.
And
did you go right back?
And then I went right back and that was the helium business. And
right. Huh. So you got lucky.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I knew that it was the right thing to do at the time.
Right.
Keep working.
Right.
It was helping my business, and it was helping LGT.
Yeah. It was weird when the pandemic hit. I keep this calendar, or really spreadsheet of where everybody's working. And over to the right on my spreadsheet, I always keep all the drivers, that are available, right? Which we never have anybody available, but back then we did. But it was just scary to watch this sheet where all the people kept getting released, and this list of available drivers was growing, and the list of drivers working was decreasing. So people like you, that we could keep working, it was just, we were in the same boat. Please don't take any time off. Please keep working, just so we could, stay afloat. So it's interesting. So you're still married?
Yes.
You have 2 children?
Yes.
You have a daughter and a son.
Correct.
And you just had some really exciting news you shared with me this morning.
Yes. My son and his wife are expecting a new baby in March.
Yeah. So congratulations.
Yeah. Carolyn and I are really excited about being grandparents.
Yeah. So maybe you'll spend a little bit more time at home.
Yeah. Well, all the more reason to be on a Houston assignment.
There you go.
Take my days off at the house.
Well, I want to thank you for being here today, and appreciate your willingness to share.
Thank you. I really appreciate what LGT has helped me do, and that everybody here is always willing to help when you call in.
Well, I'm glad. I mean, that's what we strive for. We try to be very, we are your support, right? You are the ones that are making this company run, and we are here to support you. So I hope that's what you get. I hope that's what you feel. And I wish you a very Merry Christmas, by the way, Ed.
Thank you very much.
All
Merry
right.
Christmas to you.
That's all for this episode. If you like our podcast, please go and leave us a review. You can find more information on LGT, this podcast, or myself on lgttransport.com. Check out our social media platforms for new content every day, and we hope everyone has a great rest of their day. Thanks for listening, everyone.